Boy, when did food get so expensive? Last time I did a grocery shop, I thought I was going to have to sell my kidney. Whilst the cost of food has shot up as of late, some food items like olive oil and saffron have always had soaring price points, and the reasons why are astounding. So, whether you're a gallivanting gastronomist or a microwave maestro, prepare yourself to be blown away by the unbelievable reasons why some supermarket mainstays cost so darn much. I'll live, oh laugh, oh love. I bet most of our moms have the same things in their cupboards. Some old baking dish that's seen better days, a kitchen mixer from the 1800s, and a bottle of olive oil. Now, I don't know for sure what bygone era the mixer or dish came from, but I can tell you where olive oil comes from: the grocery store. As for how it got to the grocery store, it's a little trickier. And is it even worth the money when I could buy a gallon of sunflower or vegetable oil for a fraction of the price? Well, for a lot of people, it is. After all, the global olive oil market was put at an astronomical $12.3 billion in 2022 alone, and it's predicted to keep growing. But why is something seemingly so simple such a lucrative gold mine? Well, to find out, let's start things off with the basics. What actually is olive oil? Well, it's the fat extracted from, well, you guessed it, olives. Not only is it delicious to eat, but it can keep you looking pretty and has a butt ton of health benefits too. Awesome. Now, not all olives are created equally. There are more factors that affect the quality of a finished bottle of olive oil than you could shake a big leafy branch at. Altitude, harvest times, and the methods of harvesting all have a huge impact on what goes into the bottle on your supermarket shelves. But the most important thing is the cultivar. That's the type of olive itself, and the way farmers have bred them over centuries to produce the best oil. So, if the best olives make the best olive oil, where can I get the best olives? Luckily, olive trees are quite hardy and will bear fruit in a whole load of different climates. But just like me, they prefer a little Mediterranean sunshine. Spain, Italy, and Morocco are the largest producers, with Spain growing a whopping 5 times as many olives as their second biggest competitor. Alright, I got it. Get the best olives, give them a squeeze, bada bing, bada boom, that's $30 in a bottle. I'm in the money. Easy, Tiger. You might know the what, but you don't know the hows and the whens. It takes between 3 to 5 years for a new olive tree to actually grow any olives. Yep, it's a long game. And when fruit eventually does grow, farmers need to bring in the harvest at the right time to make the most of their yield. This can differ depending on location, but typically throughout September and October. The olives accumulate a large amount of oil and get all juicy and fat. As the weather cools and the days get shorter throughout November, the oil accruement slows down. By now, the olives are so ripe they begin falling off the tree. But if they hit the ground, the oil within them starts to break down and can be ruined. So, workers have to move fast and pick the precious fruit before it falls to avoid wasting what they've painstakingly waited for. Roughly, it takes about 50 pounds of these super fat olives to make a gallon of oil. That's a colossal 36,000 olives. Yikes. And each tree will only produce between 33 to 44 pounds of olives in a year. So, in order to make any money, farmers need more than a couple of trees to actually produce anything to sell. But the more trees you have, the more land you need to grow the trees. And that also means more workers are needed to help pick those olives. Oof. Anyone else's wallets just creak? Even with the best olive pickers in the world, it might be worth considering calling in the big guns to help you out. Nowadays, nearly all olive harvesting is done in one of 2 ways, either by machine or by hand. Each has its pros and cons. Mechanical harvesting has grown increasingly popular as it's a much quicker way of bringing in a massive yield. Large machines grip onto the trunks of olive trees and shake them really hard to release the fruit. They then fall into a sort of net, or a special device sucks them up. Boy, I'd sure love to stick some big robot arms on that, lay down beneath one of them, and let it pour all that salty goodness straight into my mouth. Using these hulking machines, just one farmer can bring in a ridiculous 141 tons of olives every day. That's about the same weight as a blue whale. Now that's a whole lot of oil. However, there's a drawback. The roughhousing at the hands of these machines isn't exactly easy on the trees and can damage them. Plus, industrial farming machines can easily cost upwards of an eye-watering $100,000. Oh, mother, that's a mammoth cost to burden before you've even got any olive oil to sell. As such, many olive oil purists and small-scale farmers prefer to keep things a little bit old school. How, you ask? Why, you and your buddies put a net beneath the tree, then stand around and whack it with a big stick, of course. I know, if a machine giving it a little shake is gonna damage it, surely beating it about can't be good either. Well, you're not dishing out the beatdown of the century on this leafy piñata. It only gets hit hard enough to dislodge the fruit. However, whilst it's lighter on the trees, it's also lighter on the yield. The number of olives produced by manual labor is much, much lower, at around 460 pounds a day, which isn't even a quarter of a ton. Yikes. That's over 560 times less olives. Sure, you saved forking out loads of money for a big machine to do the work, but now you're stuck with a wage bill for the huge legion of tree whackers you hired instead. Whew! That's all the olives brought in. I'm exhausted. Wait, where do you think you're going? We're not even close to being done. So first, hit those like and subscribe buttons to keep up to date with my amazing videos. Now, come on, break's over. Back to it. Now, where were we? Right. Once all the fruit is brought in, it gets weighed to establish the quantity, then washed to clear off any unwanted dirt and debris. After that, it's straight to a mill to be crushed. Crushing the fruit breaks down the plant tissues and releases some of the oils, which turns the olives into a goopy, homogeneous paste. That looks delicious. Spain's largest producer of olive oil crushes up to 2,200 tons of olives every single day, and the whole harvest needs to be processed within 24 hours of bringing in the fruit to avoid fermentation or oxidation, ruining the final flavor. Now hold on, before you go chucking all your olives into that old dodgy mixer your mom has, I'm gonna need you to chill out. Literally. Temperature control is of utmost importance in producing the best quality olive oil. If temperatures exceed 122 degrees Fahrenheit, the oil will begin losing all the nutritional benefits. Now, 122 degrees sounds like a lot. I'd melt if I even got close to that. And traditional mills, like we just saw, don't really have this problem. But inside the largest, most modern industrial machines, things get pretty toasty. As a result, these newer olive handling machines have to be specially configured to keep things nice and cool. And finally, we can actually begin extracting olive oil. Boy, I'm pooped already. But we got juice to make, and this is where it gets, juicy. In the past, the most popular method for extracting the olive oil was arranging it in layers like this. Each of those layers is filled with olive goop and put under a lot of pressure to squeeze out the oil. However, nowadays, technology has afforded us a more high-tech solution to extraction called centrifugation. These clever machines, called centrifuges, can separate particles in a liquid according to density. They spin the liquid super fast, which causes particles of higher density, that's our oil, to separate from the water and debris. Centrifugation has become more favored as it makes better oils at less cost. It's a win-win situation. Out of all the 1,700 olive oil producers in Spain, only 0.5% still use the old school pressing system. Sheesh, fellas, get with the times. At last, we've got our oil. Now all that's left to do before packing it up and shipping it off is the quality control. This sounds boring, but it's actually really important in determining how much the oil is actually worth. Have you ever wondered what the difference between olive oil and extra virgin olive oil is? Well, it's nothing to do with what they got up to after senior prom. Get your mind out of the darn gutter. It's a mark of certain flavor profiles and taste characteristics in the oil. Extra virgin is the tippy top shelf best you can get. But in order for oil to be extra virgin, it has to have less than 1% acidity. Low acidity levels indicate that fats in the oil haven't broken down into fatty oleic acid. It also retains many more antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals. This is all science-y mumbo-jumbo. Basically, extra virgin olive oil not only tastes better, but it's better for you. Virgin olive oil is the next step down. It's made the same way as extra virgin olive oil, except the acidity can be up to 2%. Now, this doesn't sound like a lot, but when you think that's over twice as much as the top shelf stuff, it's actually a huge reduction in the quality. As for your plain Jane olive oil, I'd stay clear if I were you. And it might only be a quarter of the price, but you'd be lucky if even a quarter of it is actually the good stuff. Don't believe me? Go check the label. Often these cheaper olive oils are packed with, well, cheaper oils. But what actually are these cheaper oils, and what makes them cheap? Let's take vegetable oil. The majority of cheap vegetable oils you see on shelves are made from palm fruit oil. These plants naturally grow in tropical rainforests and are evergreen and perennial, meaning they produce fruit throughout the whole year. Whilst an olive produces 10 to 20% of its weight in extra virgin olive oil, palm fruit is actually around 56% oil. In fact, 1 hectare of land could produce 0.3 tons of olive oil, but a staggering 3.2 tons of palm oil. That's more than 10 times the amount. Because of this, biodiverse natural rainforests are being leveled to make way for more production-efficient, but far less ecologically viable oil palm plantations. But that's another story entirely. As you can see, by volume alone, olive oil isn't exactly the most efficient product in the world. But that doesn't mean it's not worth the effort. The most expensive olive oil you can buy is Lambda Ultra Premium Extra Virgin Olive Oil. Just 500 milliliters, which is just a little over 2 cups, is going to set you back a shocking $12,800. Oh, my poor heart. Each bottle even comes in its own bespoke, handcrafted box with 2 white gold plates, one of which is adorned with the name of the buyer. It's supposedly well regarded for pungent, fruity flavors, but I wouldn't know. I'm not a lunatic prepared to spend the price of a car on a bottle of olive juice. Have you tried this outrageously expensive oil? Let me know down in the comments if it's got bang for your buck. Woo! All in a day's work. In a quick summary, olive oil is so expensive because making it is so darn complicated. You need to buy the land, plant the trees, wait for them to bear fruit, wait again for the right time to harvest them, then rush through all the other steps to produce the olive oil before the fruit goes bad. Boy, even thinking about it all makes me tired. But olive oil isn't the most complicated food to produce. Oh no. You've done enough hard work for today though, so grab a snack and enjoy a well-earned rest. Be prepared though. Some of these upcoming foodstuffs make olive farming look like a walk in the park. Crocus pocus. Olive schmolive. How's about something for those of us a little more adventurous in the kitchen? Ever heard of saffron? It's a red spice used in European, South Asian, and Middle Eastern foods for its distinctive sweet and floral flavors. Not only is it delicious, but historically it's been used in ancient beauty treatments, clothing dyes, and even as a traditional medicine. In fact, saffron has always been highly coveted, and at times its pound-for-pound price has rocketed to over 3 times that of gold. It's still extraordinarily high today, with the best saffron fetching a mind-blowing $5,000 per pound. Yikes. But why? Well, harvesting this steep seasoning is an incredibly intensive process. Saffron is picked from the Crocus sativus flower and is actually the stigma or pollen receptor of the flower. Each flower will only ever produce 3 stigmas. So, once they're gone, they're gone. As if that wasn't enough, each strand is so exceptionally fragile that a machine will damage them. Saffron farmers have to painstakingly pluck the flowers by hand, then take the stigmas out from them. All that picking has to be done before sunrise because the strands are so delicate that simply being exposed to the sun is enough to damage them. Sheesh. What's more, one full-time farmer harvesting saffron all day rarely collects more than the weight of a single jelly bean's worth. Whew! And then, all the little strands must be dried out. This process varies from country to country, but can take up to 10 days. That sounds like back-breaking work. And for the 2 or 3 weeks a year that these flowers bloom, it is. That's right. The entire year's harvest happens across mere days. Factoring in the labor costs and the astounding complexities of producing this spice, it's no surprise that saffron is the most expensive spice in the world by a colossal margin. It's a good job you only need the tiniest pinch to flavor your food. Otherwise, all these biryanis would have me remortgaging my house. Now, home cooking aficionados, before you get your basmati in a bunch, I know what you're thinking. I've got saffron in my cupboard, and I only paid a few dollars for it. Sure, but are you certain what you've got is the real deal? You see, when there's not a lot of product to go around and the prices keep going up, it opens up the market to cheap counterfeits. In a 2019 raid at a factory in Alicante, Spain, authorities seized an eye-watering $900,000 worth of bootlegged saffron ready to be shipped throughout Europe. Whilst many products that line our supermarket shelves might be labeled as saffron, they could easily be corn silk dyed to look like saffron, or in the case of the warehouse in Alicante, real saffron cut with other substances, like cheap plant fibers. So, how can you make sure you're getting the authentic experience? Well, price is a good starting point. If a deal seems too good to be true, then it probably is. Don't get scammed trying to cut costs. Secondly, choose a reputable seller. Iran produces 90% of the world's saffron. If you were asking me then, it's not a bad place to start looking. But Iranian saffron is arguably not the best. That prize goes to Kashmiri saffron, which is made from longer stigmas. Of course, better produce means a much bigger price tag. So, if you want to go hell for broke on a big night in, be my guest. I'm getting DoorDash. Millionaire Vanillionaire. Normally, I'm not much of a silver medal guy, but the second most expensive spice could be even more shocking than the first. Saffron might have been new to you, but you've definitely tried this next flavor. Whether that's in your morning coffee, your favorite sugary snacks, or eating an entire tub of ice cream crying over your ex, yep, the world's second most expensive spice is vanilla. That's right. In its purest pod form, the so-called boring flavor sells for $600 per pound. Yikes. Not so boring now, right? Wait, I could roll up to Trader Joe's and buy a pint of that Nilla goodness for a couple bucks. By that logic, there's hardly any Nilla in there. Well, there's actually none. Whoa there, before you go charging in, waving your receipt, asking for a refund, let me explain. The vanilla flavor you get in your lattes and puddings is actually an artificial compound called synthetic vanillin. Picture the vanilla your mom says you have at home. Chemically, it's close to the real vanillin found in vanilla pods, but in reality, it's made from a similar yet different molecule, such as eugenol, which is extracted from aromatic spices like cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg. The eugenol goes through a process known as isomerization, which jiggles around the arrangement of the atoms into something more akin to organic vanillin, called isoeugenol. Then it gets mixed with an alkali and undergoes an oxidation process, where it's combined with, well, you guessed it, oxygen. This completes the big transformation needed for it to flavor all your favorite snacks. Sheesh, who knew Twinkies were so scientific? Nowadays, it's far more common for vanilla-flavored products to contain this fake vanilla than to have even been in the same room as any actual vanilla. But why is that? Well, the real vanilla comes from a particular type of orchid that originated from Southern America and Mexico. However, that's not where the majority of the world's vanilla comes from anymore. In the late 1700s, a large part of the global vanilla trade was moved to Madagascar. But farmers failed to account for one small problem. The orchids can only be pollinated by the Mexican Melipona bee, and they were all back in Mexico. And no bees means no beans. After decades of failing to produce any vanilla pods, the farmers had to become busy little bees and do the pollinating themselves. Not like that, but they did figure out a less ridiculous way of doing it. See, vanilla orchids have both male and female reproductive parts. They've got the facilities, but they need a little extra help. You and me both, pal. That's where the farmers come in. They take a thin, pointy little stick and lift the delicate membrane that keeps the male and female parts separate. They then bring the two sections together by pinching their thumb and forefinger. Boom! This pollinates the plant, and a vanilla pod will almost immediately begin to form. Okay, I've made it sound a lot easier than it actually is. This is finicky, fiddly work. And it's only made harder by the fact that vanilla orchids bloom just one morning every year. So, if you take that day to have an extra hour in bed, ooh, bad news, buddy. Your sleepy ass is gonna need a new job. Maybe think about night shifts. Or maybe you'd be better at processing the pods. What? Did you think you just plucked these beanie boys off the flower and ate them? Nuh-uh. 9 months after they've been pollinated, the pods are ready to be picked. But then they have to go through a lengthy curing process. First, they're bleached in hot water before being placed in large sweat containers for between 36 and 48 hours. This is where the beans begin to change from green to brown. From then, they alternate between drying in the sun in the day and going into the sweat box at night, on, off, for between 5 to 15 days. And after that, they go for another slower period of drying indoors in a well-ventilated room atop special drying racks. The whole process, from growing and pollinating to finally having beans to export, takes about a year. During that time, every 5 to 7 pounds of green beans shrinks down to just 1 pound of processed vanilla. Sheesh. Now I know why it's so pricey. Boy, I sure hope Dairy Queen keeps using that fake Nilla, or my ice cream baths are gonna get seriously expensive. No kisses for you. I'll admit it, I'm a snacker. I can't go 45 minutes without shoving a Butterfinger deep into my mouth hole. What can I say? I'm a glut for the nut. But I'd never given much thought to how the chocolate in my favorite candy bars is made. And to my surprise, cacao, the plant chocolate comes from, is incredibly hard to farm. Because the cacao pods all ripen at different times, farmers have to keep an eye on them all year round. Each pod contains between 20 and 50 beans sat in a white, pulpy fruit. These pods are hacked down from the tree with machetes, split, and all that beany goodness is scooped out. But hold your hungry horses. The chalky beans in their untamed, unsweetened form are incredibly bitter. Before they can become delicious chocolate, they have to be fermented for 6 to 10 days to destroy the seed coat around the outside of the bean and improve the flavor. Next, the beans are dried for between 5 and 10 days before being sorted and sold on. Woo! That sounds exhausting. Well, it is. It takes one tree an entire year to produce enough beans to make a little over a pound of coca. So farmers need a hell of a lot of trees, and that means a hell of a lot of work. You're probably wondering how cocoa has wound up in a video about expensive foods though, right? Candy bars are just a couple of bucks. Now, let me guess. It's not really chocolate. Never saw that twist coming. Well, not quite. It's definitely real chocolate. In fact, in most of the Western world's chocolate, it's pretty inexpensive. Sadly, it's not the case for farmers who grow it. Over a third of the world's cocoa produce comes from the Ivory Coast. But get this, many farmers who spend their entire lives growing and processing the beans have no idea what chocolate even tastes like. Chocolate candy bars in the Ivory Coast cost about $2.70, which isn't a lot for you and me, but it's about a third of a farmer's daily pay. In order for me to enjoy cheap chocolate here in the US, the farmers right at the end of the supply chain get paid way less for their product. Now, this doesn't mean you should feel bad for enjoying a delicious sweet treat every now and then. Just try and buy more fair trade marked goods. These ensure farmers are given a guaranteed minimum price for their hard work. Hey, neato. And with that, I'm hungry, so it's the end of the video. My poor little hands are ruined from all of that labor. I've never worked so hard in a day in my life. Which of these heroic harvests was your favorite? Let me know down in the comments below, and thanks for watching.